Okay, well, we'll start on the assumption that they actually have a formal strategy in the first place, because most of the time that's already being generous. But let's say that an organization does have a formal strategic plan, formal direction. I think the biggest problem is balancing the urgent operational and the longer term, air quotes, strategic. And it's like working on the business versus in the business. Everybody is, air quotes, busy. And so sufficiently resourcing the amount of time, money, energy, focus, collaboration, communication to be able to like bring these projects to life is the biggest challenge, because you're kind of fighting the forces of inertia. You're fighting people's desire for the same, but it's really an exercise in moving towards individual performance versus collective outcomes, and recognizing that for most organizations, the only way a strategic plan gets implemented successfully is effective collaboration, communication at scale. I think an organization can only move as fast as its own internal capacity. So if you have a strategic plan that is 1 or 2 years old and it is still the same, I would say one of two things have occurred. Either you haven't implemented successfully, or the world has changed such that your priorities are different, but the old ones still remain. So, for example, IT infrastructure. If you haven't solved your IT infrastructure, it doesn't mean it's no longer a problem. It just means that whatever fire has come up is bigger, or you just haven't addressed it. Similarly with sales culture, whatever else might come up. Well, if we're really going to get philosophical, what really is a problem? If a problem is the kind of juxtaposition between current state and desired future state, then the problem then creates itself. And I think that you need to make strategy a problem if it is to be successfully implemented. Otherwise, it becomes a nice to have versus a must have. But fundamentally, as we view strategy, it's we are here, we want to be here. How do we close the gap? And then how do we address that, given that we have to make choices and trade-offs between what we want to do, what we can do, and then the kind of sequencing of all of that. It's called our aligned strategy development process. I don't know if that was a softball question, but I'll take it. But yes, I mean, for groups, really getting them on the same page, moving from implied to explicit, having a real clear destination, that is the number one thing we do as a firm. And it is, to me, a prerequisite of organizational success and efficacy. Fundamentally, the biggest problem that we solve for teams is what we call the multiple destination trap. And I don't know if in your research you found this or not. So I'm trying to tell you stuff that you haven't read already. And basically, different people have different ideas of what success look like. They're all going to different places. They have too many options, too many alternatives, and they're stuck because they're not moving. And so what we offer to teams is what we call our one destination model. Everybody is aligned towards a clear vision of where they want to go, mission, values, priorities, goals, and actions. And then we walk that through our kind of 2 or 3 day process, looking at current state, future state, risks and roadblocks, prioritization, and then implementation planning is what you talked about first. Most people do their strategic plan and they never think about how they're actually going to implement it. And so we incorporate that as part of the planning process to kind of front load the needs. That's what differentiates us. And I don't want to make it sound like a sales pitch, because it's genuinely not intended to be, is that while we try to approach strategy is human focused, because at the end of the day, the only thing in organizations are human beings. So we incorporate management science, organizational behavior, psychology, to understand not only the, on paper strategy, and I'm sure you've heard the term, your listeners have, shelf plan. There's a document that sits on a shelf and never gets moved, versus a plan that actually gets moved forward. And the difference there is the buy-in and the culture around strategy. And then additionally, when we look at our framework for implementation, which we call our 6 critical capacities for strategy implementation, we focus on the environment around the plan versus the plan itself. So yes, you need to be aligned on a direction and priorities and tasks and goals and OKRs, or however you want to look at it. But then also, like, is the organism that is an organization supported for strategy execution. Is there the right communication? Are we tracking and monitoring? Is there leadership and accountability? Is there change management? Is there alignment? And so all of those things, as I'm sure you've seen in your career, are prerequisites for actually getting the job done, let alone just a document.